Up until 1919, most rental properties were rented by private landlords in one way or another. Then Lloyd George's government required councils to provide homes for heroes, and council houses started to begin. But however, it was not until after the Second World War that council house building really began in earnest with Attlee's government, and really continued for the next couple of decades, producing over 300,000 houses per year. These houses were rented at what we would today consider below market value. Private landlords generally owned their properties outright in those days and therefore had no mortgage costs to cover. It was therefore the preserve of the wealthy looking for a secure asset to park their money, hence the term safe as houses. Yet it is interesting to note, even for some of this period, no one wanted to buy houses as they were no longer regarded as a safe bet. And on a personal note, my grandfather was able to buy up several blocks of flats at knockdown prices in the 1930s. However, there is another reason why it was not attractive to be a private landlord apart from rents being low. A tenant was a tenant for life. Once they were in, unless they decided not to be in. What do I mean? Well, when they signed the lease, it was their home for as long as they wanted it to be, and they could, under certain circumstances, pass the rental on to a family member. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose a husband and wife have a son or daughter that stays at home and never moves out. Then, at some point, their parents die, while the son or daughter is living there. The son or daughter choose to stay on in the property, and there's nothing that the landlord could do to remove them. Rental properties were therefore difficult to sell, and they would have to be sold with sitting tenants, and this created downward pressure on the house value. Add to this that if the tenant felt that the rent being charged was unfair, they could apply to a rent tribunal to review the rent, and then they would look at it and they would look at comparable rents, which were usually council houses, and often impose a lower rental figure. And there was nothing the landlord could do because they were legally bound to honour. The only mortgage products available in those days were those from building societies, and they only lent to private individuals for private residency. After all, that was a founding principle of building societies, and you had to be a saver as well as a borrower with them. I remember a very uncomfortable interview with a building society manager when applying for a mortgage in the 70s, and he demanded to know why he should lend to me, as I had only been a saver for a couple of years. There was, however, an alternative rental market that was far more favourable, where homeowners could let out rooms in their houses by taking in a lodger who would often share a room and have breakfast and dinner provided for them. Then there was furnished lets, most popular with students and young professionals. This is where a single room would be let out in a property, and it was the model I used in the 70s and early 80s. This most closely resembles today HMOs. However, mortgages were still not available for these properties other than commercial loans at very high interest rates. This was in stark contrast to the rental market in the USA, which was predominantly private landlords who rented out at commercial rents to cover all their costs and make a good cash flow. These were single-family homes and apartment complexes with managers on site to look after all aspects from finding tenants, collecting rents, and even had their own dedicated maintenance staff, and the more upmarket complexes providing private concierge services.